Ciao, and welcome back to my identity playlist. Today, I want to continue to talk a little bit about language. I think language is really the biggest topic within the identity because it is how you express your identity. And language is the way we express ourselves. So the more languages you know and the more you speak them, the more you can express your own identity. And it is very closely linked to the country and to your culture and to your parents and great parents and your roots. So when learning a new language, normally when you learn it at school or via an app or whatever, normally you start by learning the word in the new language in close connection to the same word in your original language, let's say. So it is building bridges from one word to the other. This word means table in your language and in the new language means this and that, and then you learn how to gender. If some languages gender the words, English doesn't. It's always the table. But in other languages, a table can be feminine or masculine or neutral. And you have to learn that. And then you learn more words and the verbs and pronouns and the whole grammatic. And so you build up puzzle by puzzle this whole language. But normally, again, it starts with translating, which is different when you just make a deep dive within a language. Say you go there and you live there and you have nobody else to talk to in your language. That's the deepest dive you can do because you are there all alone and you have to somehow learn how to communicate to the people living there, which is not very easy depending on the culture of this country. There are more open countries and more closer countries. And by now we do have English, which in many countries is spoken at least at a certain level, so somehow you can help yourself with English. But this way of diving in is very similar to how a child grows up with a language or two languages, because the mother is talking to it in one language and the father is talking to the child in another language, and it is not using one language and then translating, building bridges, how I call it, from one word to the other, but it learns every single word in the two languages, to stay in this example, just related to the object. So the table is the table and not the translation of my original word for the table that I learned years ago. So these bridges normally are not a problem, but when you learn a new language, you have to first build up this new vocabulary and the grammar, and then at a certain point you have to let go and just speak, just communicate and talk. And the next step then, which is even more important in my opinion, is to stop translating. So in the second step, you build the sentences in your original language and then you translate them. And this process goes, the longer you do it, the quicker it is. But at a certain point you have to reach the point where you stop translating but build the sentences in the new language directly, which is difficult, of course. And I feel the difference in those languages that I know. So if I am asked to translate something from German to Italian, I can't do it. I can't, because I do not have the connection between Italian and German. So there's no bridge between the two. So if somebody asks me, what does this mean in Italian? I have to get out of my German drawer, as I call it in my brain, go to the Italian drawer, and then imagine the situation, the same situation, relive it, let's say, and then I can say it in Italian, but it's never a literal translation because I can't do it. Where I can do it is with English. So German English is perfect in both directions because this is how I learned the language. So I was speaking it just already as a child, but the real learning of the language outside of the, let's say, daily tasks, daily topics of a child was in German school. And there I learned word by word by translating. And this, at this point in my daily business, for instance, is of help because I can translate from German to English and from English to German without any problem. On one hand, it is a disadvantage to learn a language by translating, by building bridges. On the other hand, it might also be helpful. I remember when my daughter was a little child, we were still living in Germany, and as mentioned, we speak Italian in our family. And so, for a 3-year-old or 2-year-old, the important topics are animals, for instance. Okay. So she was hearing German from our friends, from kindergarten, from going outside. So it was not a purely Italian world she was living in because we were in Germany. So she had, at a certain point, without me explaining, she had understood, and that is how children learn a new language. They just perceive, without thinking, perceive the structure, the grammar of a language, and they start to build it up by deducing the rules. That's why normally when you grow up in one language, you don't know the grammar by rules, you just use it, which is the normal way. And then later at school, you learn them. So my daughter had learned that, for instance, a giraffa in Italian, in German is a giraffe. A pinguino in Italian is a penguin in German. And a tigre in Italian is a tiger in German. So in most cases, somehow she understood, and we all know that by all those scenes where we hear Italians speaking English, because Italians need a vowel at the end of every word, because the vowel is how you connect the word to the other word, because Italian is, and that is why it's called, many people say it's just like music, because we are connecting, we are stitching one word to the other, and we can't stitch two consonants to each other. We need a vowel in between. And that is why we all, when there is one, when there isn't one, we just build it in. So my daughter learned the difference between Italian and German is that in Italian there's a vowel at the end, and in German it isn't. So, and one day a very good friend of ours came, German guy, came to visit, and she had learned that many people brought gifts for her when they would come and see us. Mainly, after Christmas, for instance. So he came to visit, and she opened the door, and looked at him, and then she said, "Wo ist mein Regal?" So she had learned the German "Wo ist," which means where is. and then literally she had said, "My shelf." Why that? Because in Italian the word gift is regalo. So following her rule, the German word is built by taking the Italian word, cancelling the last vowel. So from regalo you get to regal. But unfortunately, regal in German is an existing word, which means something completely different, means shelf. So this friend of ours was standing there looking at this child and then helplessly looking at me, asking, why is she asking where her shelf is? She just simply wanted to ask if he had a gift for her. Another topic that I wanted to enlarge a little bit is what languages you speak or you should speak or could speak at home with your children if you have different languages in the family. Because that also was an experience that I made. So our family language was, and still is, Italian. Fine. But, and I also mentioned that already, for instance, in that moment where I tried to support her to learn how to count. So although 1 by 1 is 1, 1 by 2 is 2, 1 by 3 is 3, I learned it in Italian, and that's the only way I can count. So whatever language I'm speaking, if I'm asked what is 7 by 8, I have to switch to my Italian brain and do the math in Italian, and then I can translate the number into German, English, or whatever it is, and then I can give the answer. I don't know it if I don't do this switching. And of course, I didn't want her to learn it in Italian because she had to be perfect in school, so she had to do it in German. So the whole thing then happened in German. So we were switching there already, which until that moment I had tried to avoid, because you have to be consistent with your language towards your child. But in that moment, I had to get away from consistency for the purpose of her being able to learn counting in German at school. And this, of course, happened more and more. So whenever I helped her study something, we were talking between each other in Italian, but whenever we were covering the topic of what she was learning, we had to switch to German, of course, because she had to know it in German. Sometimes I could do some explanations on top in Italian, but the real content of the lessons she had to do in German. And then at a later step, she started being very proficient in English, and she has many friends who come from very different areas, and this means that she speaks, in most cases, English with her friends. And now we have the other point that she was just loving English as a language. So she, every now and then, she started speaking to me in English, and I could say, talk to me in Italian, because, and I mentioned that already before, I'm sitting in my kitchen, and she's the only one in the house, and she starts talking to me, and my brain expects her to talk Italian. So I'm in my Italian drawer, let's say. But then she talks English, and my Italian brain is just like, wait, what is happening here? So I have to get out of it and get into the English brain to understand what she's saying. Of course, this is a thousandth of a second, but in that time, she already continued the sentence in English, while my brain was still walking from the Italian drawer to the English drawer. So I lost the beginning of the sentence. And this was irritating for me. So I always said, no, please stop talking English to me. We speak Italian in this house. And that was okay, but sometimes it happened, but that was not a real problem. Okay. But nowadays, and as mentioned, she's 21, she's studying at university in another city. So she talks to me and then she wants to tell me something that happened or tell me about a discussion that she had or an adventure that she had with a friend of hers. But while this was happening, she was speaking English with him. So in that situation, the first time she started talking English to me to tell me about this situation or discussion or adventure, I told her, speak Italian to me. And she was confused because it was somehow stored in her English drawer. So at a certain point I accepted, or she starts saying in Italian, oh mama, and then this happened, but I have to tell it in English because it happened in English. And then she switches to English and I'm prepared. I know I have to switch from an Italian drawer to the English drawer, and then she can tell me the story. So what I'm trying to tell you is, on one hand, yes, you should be consistent with the language that you use with your child. But at a certain point, you have to do some compromises. And this is reality, as mentioned, depending on the situation, like the school, as I mentioned. So children should learn the content of the lessons in the local language that they are having at school. And also depending on the situation, which is talked about. And I guess we all have then to, at a certain age of the children, accept this and open up. And it's fruitful. It's a positive thing for both for the parents and for the children. The last topic is not that much a language topic, but my daughter also mentioned it in the interview. It's the video number 5, if you're interested in this interview with her. And she mentioned it, and it's regarding the names of your children. Because I think it's natural that if you are going to another country and you have a child, you want to give your child a name which is linked to your culture. I guess it's natural. And I'm not even talking about giving the name of the grandfather or of your mother or whatever. This is additionally on top, but it's still playing in the same context. So giving your child a name from your culture, which is understandable. On the other side, there are people who want to give a clear sign that they are integrating, that they are willing to be part of this new country, giving their child a name of this new culture, which is also understandable. And I don't know what is the right thing. What I did was that I gave my daughter a name that was Italian, also the second and the third and the fourth. She has 4 names. So they are Italian, but at least 3 of them are international. So her 4th name is Sophia, and Sophia is, at least in the Western world, an international name. You can discuss if it's written with an F or with PH. You can have Sophia or Sophie, but the name, it is of Greek origins, and it is somehow used in all Western culture. And Vittoria, I just put it in the Italian writing, but I was sure that it could be pronounced by Germans, by English, and there is, let's say, the English pronunciation and the German pronunciation. So if Italian is Vittoria, and the Germans say Victoria, and the British say Victoria, so they can pronounce it, and still it is her name. And this might be a good step. What I always thought about is how Chinese people feel about their names. Not their proper names. This, I hope they like them. But since many, many years, there is this sort of tradition that when a Chinese person learns English or German from their teacher, they receive a Western name on top. And this Western name they use in their business life or whenever they travel around in Western countries. And on one side, I experienced many of these Chinese people to be proud of their Western name. But on the other side, I'm not so sure if this is the right way to go, because it is taking away their original name, and a name is, for me, very important, and it is representative of your identity, who you are, your personality, whatever you are is in your name. Names are extremely important for us. You don't change your first name just like that. Sometimes it happens, but normally you don't do that. So if you have Chinese origins and you have a Western name on top, I would love to hear about your feelings about it. I'm not sure if this is so positive, because I think we all can do the effort of learning another person's name, even if the name is not coming from our culture. Of course, there are names that are very long, then maybe there's a way to find an abbreviation which can be learned quickly by people of other languages. But even that, I think I'm not a friend of abbreviations of names. All those Nikki and Stevie and Jackie, and I don't like it, because the name is representing the personality. Whenever mainly Australian guys, when they heard my name, next thing was they were calling me Sandy, and I was always saying, I'm not Sandy, I'm Alessandra. And my mother thought about 9 months about my name, and she decided for Alessandra, not for Sandy. So, and they always smile, and I try to say it with a smile, but I don't like the abbreviations of names. Sometimes it's okay. I think there again, you should think about possible abbreviations of your name and then decide which ones you like or accept and which ones you don't. So if really needed, I'm fully okay with Ale, which is the standard abbreviation of every Alessandra, Alessandro in Italy. We are all called Ale, and strangely enough, this doesn't bother me. In German and English, I'm okay with Alex, but all other abbreviations that you could imagine, and there are tons of them, I don't like them, and I don't accept them. I just refuse to listen if I'm called by that name. And also for my daughter, there are a few abbreviations that I like, but many of them I don't. So when she's called Vic or Vicky, that's not my daughter. 2 days ago, she told me that a new friend of her called her Tori, and she likes it. I don't that much, but it's okay. But again, this is something where you have to think about it, and you have to decide which one is representing your identity the best. So this was today's talking about identity. I hope you liked it. If you did, just leave me a like. If possible, just subscribe to my channel. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just a click and it doesn't cost you anything else. And as always, be kind.